I'll call to order this council committee, the whole work session, where we'll continue our discussion on the proposed 2014 budget. Point out that council member Joe Faulkner is excused this evening, and also point out that we're joined by our mayor, Mayor Ava Freisinger, who will discuss the mayor's recommendations and options for reducing expenditures and possible revenue enhancements later on in our agenda. We have gone through the entire budget and generated questions, and the answers to those questions are generally presented at the beginning of our meeting. And the last batch of questions, the answers to those questions will begin our discussion in just a minute. We're also joined at the table by our Finance Director, Diane Marcotte, and the Deputy Finance Director, Beth Ann. So with that, we're ready to begin the response to questions. And I would just point out as we go through the responses, if it does not answer the question that you ask, or if you need additional clarification, please do it at that time, because I would hope that later on in the meeting we can begin to make some decisions on how we would like to see the proposed budget adjusted before it comes back to the council for final action. So with that, Diane, would you kick things off for us?
Thank you very much, sir. The handout starting on page 3, there is a recap in your handout that is a recap of what is on the whiteboard, where we left off on October the 29th with regards to some proposed items for the council's consideration in looking at some reduction. Then long term, as you can see, we have 3 items that are more longer term focus that would probably require some workshops so that council could have some conversations on where they wanted to go with those topics. So the first question we have is on page 4, and that first question is the probation officer cost neutral? And the answer would be in the affirmative. The total salary and benefits for the position is around $100,000, and currently the estimated revenue for 2013 is nearly $184,000. So this position is the council's goal of this being cost neutral has been fulfilled. The next question was, there was a question on the study for the Northwest Sammamish Road and the $100,000. You can see here is an estimate from our engineering department. There is $80,000 in estimated costs, including survey, a line analysis, driveway redesign, appraisals, and the potential and the cost of estimating what a right-of-way acquisition would be. So there's a subtotal of $80,000, and then we have a contingency of $20,000 for a total of $100,000 related to the project. They're also estimating approximately 80 to 100 hours of staff time to manage this work. And then the last question that I will be addressing is the council had requested additional information on the business marketing plan, and in the responses there are 3 components to the plan. There's a sector industry analysis. The estimate on that is $45,000. Then there is the development of a marketing plan with the key messages, and then the different methodologies that one could use to get that messaging out. That's estimated at $15,000. And then there would be implementation of the marketing plan, and this would be to acquire the tools and brochures and the necessary documents or marketing material in order to go out to the business community and the public. That's estimated at $20,000. if the $50,000 is funded, they would complete the sector analysis in 2014, and the marketing and the implementation component would be a project in 2015. The last question 4, was the administration was asked to consider $300,000 in expenditures reductions to the 2014 proposed budget, and Mayor Freisinger will be addressing that response.
Thank you. Before I begin talking about those adjustments, I wanted to give a bit of a setting for the process of making those reductions in expenditure, a relatively brief history of what has happened within the city and budgeting and expenditure reductions since 2009. In 2009, the city cut approximately 25 staffing positions, which was a significant reduction, and that was done in response to the Great Recession having taken place. And then in early 2012, there were approximately 20 positions that were eliminated. So there have been significant cuts in expenditures in the form of staff levels for that time frame. With that, and looking at the request from the council to reduce expenditures by $300,000, the proposal that I am making has a number of items, and these are also in response to requests from the council for a menu. Some council members who wanted a menu, and other council members who I think perhaps wanted an array, but it amounts to the same thing. So the first expenditure, and there is an indication along the right-hand side of these things if they are long-term savings or if they're short-term savings. The first proposed expenditure reduction is of $100,000, and that is accomplished by reducing reliance on consultants for day-to-day activities within our Development Services Department. We have a necessity for some things to be done by consultants, because consultants are serving as staff in some instances, but there may be things that we could do that would reduce those expenses. Oh, I have to, yet another preface. These are not recommendations per se. They are things that could be done as options. So I think someone asked me if these things were prioritized. They are not prioritized, and they aren't recommendations. They are an array of options. The next one, a $50,000 expenditure reduction, could be accomplished by eliminating a contract with the outside consultant for lobbying services. Another $50,000 in expenditures could be accomplished by managing the use of outside legal counsel in a more efficient manner. So there would be more reliance upon things such as the Municipal Research Services Center, rather than perhaps emailing attorneys and asking for a response. Route 200, it would, it's funded in the street fund, and the fare box subsidy would be eliminated. It would result in a funding reduction of the general fund to the street fund by about $15,000, and that would be approximately a quarter of a year savings. That route is one that was cut today in the Metro Transit cuts, so that could be a moot point unless there is some desire to accomplish providing transit services in a different manner. But that's one item. Street sweeping, a 50% contribution from the Stormwater Fund was transfer 50% of the annual operating costs of the stormwater fund and eliminate the subsidy of that street sweeping program by the street fund. And the rationale is that in the fall and winter, street sweeping affects stormwater by keeping catch basins clear of leaves. $87,800 could be achieved by a reallocation of resources within the Shared Services Department. Then a $60,000 reduction could be achieved by reorganization of a position and elimination of some programs currently provided by Parks and Recreation. You see the list there: Youth Advisory Board, Youth Center, Beat the Heat, Middle School Dance, Trunk and Treasure, Father-Daughter, Valentine Day Dance. And the thought on that is that the programs right now are subsidized by the general fund, and with the middle school moving next year, it's a possibility that some of these programs might be offered elsewhere. Next item is $50,000 for a senior planner in Development Services Department. And that $50,000 could be saved by delaying hiring the position and then reevaluating the need for that position in relationship to workload. $50,000 could be saved by not contributing to the Arch Trust Fund. And then there is a $2,225 savings in the dental premium program. The anticipated increase in premiums did not occur, so that's one that definitely will happen. So those are expenditure reductions. There are also some revenue proposals that are being presented, and they are looking at the senior fee for the community center. It's currently $25 a year. The youth fee is $20 a month. The senior fee could be matched to be the equivalent of the youth fee if the council so chose. That would result in $25,000 in additional revenues. The next one is to reduce the contribution of sales tax in the capital improvement fund from 25% to 23%. That would provide $220,000 in additional revenues. And then speed camera, another speed camera in a different school zone. We didn't factor in an amount on that. We know that there are revenues from that source, but we would need assessment to determine how much that would achieve. So those are some of the array of options, both for expenditure cuts and for revenue enhancements.
I would like to thank you for bringing these options forward at our request. I fully understand that they're not recommendations, and it's it is, I almost said menu. I don't know why I don't like that term, but it's a menu that that we can choose from or have some discussion around these. I just ask, are there any questions or any clarifications that would be helpful in your decision-making at this time? Okay, well, thank you very, very much for providing that information. Is there any other information that would be useful as we begin to talk about potential budget adjustments? Okay.
I have one question. Is this on? I guess it's on.
It's our regular mics.
The light is just not as bright as that light.
They're not the button up and down, that's all. Thank you for simplifying it for us.
On the Sammamish Road, $100,000 potential increase, maybe the answer is we don't know how much it'll cost unless we spend the $100,000. I guess, is that the answer? Because I'm still questioning, the value of $100,000, not knowing whether it's a $10 million project on the back end that we simply couldn't afford, or do you spend $100,000 to help you get towards a project that we actually could afford? And it's not a project, if I recall, that's in our TIP or CFP. There's a larger Sammamish Road project that's in there, but this particular work is not included. So is that pretty much the extent of the information we have at this point on that?
Yes, if you look at the cost estimates, so the surveying, we would, that's just simply to understand where the property lines are. But some of the bigger pieces is we would have to look at some roadway realignment, and so that's part of the study. Driveway redesign, so that would mean moving some driveways, but more importantly, probably acquiring some property in order to put the sidewalk in there and acquiring that right away. So that's just to get to the point where we can actually do the construction part. But, so there's probably more upfront costs than typically in putting some sideways in, because as Councilmember Butler has said, there's that pinch point, which means acquiring property.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there other questions or clarifications? Our Deputy Council President, Councilmember Winterstein, has some information that he would like to share and put up on the screen at this time. So while we make those adjustments and
So as a matter, while we're waiting for the material I have on my laptop to be displayed on the screen, so I've taken the opportunity to consider the proposal that Mayor Freisinger just outlined that had options. And I thought it would be very helpful to put the information, it's a little bit, it's not all on the screen, so we'll fit it on there, in a format that we're used to seeing already. It's the same format of the way the general budget is presented in terms of, at the fund level, of a beginning balance, forecasted revenues, forecasted expenditures, and then ending fund balance. So the top line, and so I did it this way, and this reflects my thinking about the proposal and what it would look like. And I thought it might be a handy way just to frame the conversation with the rest of us on the council. And we can work with this. We can make changes in real time if we need to. And I really do intend this just to be a starting point of the conversation, and hopefully this will be clear, because I think it tells an interesting story. So where it's highlighted right now, these numbers are right out of the budget. So for the proposed budget, and I'm just focusing on the general fund. Now, of course, what we need to approve as a council goes beyond the general fund, but my focus here is strictly the general fund. And so this is right out of the document, the beginning fund balance, as you can see, the forecasted revenue per this budget plan, the forecasted expenditures, the ending fund balance, and then what I calculated to be the change in ending fund balance. So this is right out of the proposal. So that's the starting point. And then, and as has been discussed in this council before in previous ones, some of our previous meetings, I personally feel that I understand the appropriateness and the legality of using the monies from the LID Guarantee Fund in the way that we're proposed. We've done it before, and so this is not a precedent at all. And I was interested to see how we could possibly balance the general fund without using the LIT Guarantee Fund. So we've discussed, so I've got that in here. So this budget proposes actually transferring some monies from the LED Guarantee Fund, so that shows up as revenue in the proposed budget. What this spreadsheet does, it backs that out. So these areas right here are what I look at as potential changes to revenues, and in the other section below, it shows potential changes to expenditures. And if you're trying to read ahead right now, I will point out that the bottom line includes both, at least my idea of changes to revenue and expenditures, and you'll notice that instead of the general fund balance being in arrears of 422,000, it's actually positive by 29,000. So again, this is just one set of ideas, and I want you to see how they added up. And so one of the things we've discussed as a council, so I'm going to go back to the changes in the revenue side of things. Now, this has not been completed, and we know that there is an agenda bill that's being worked that would look at making adjustments to what I'm labeling up here as to development services fees. And I think for clarification, I look to my colleagues that are on Land and Shore. Is that the proper label? What would we?
Yes.
So development services fees. And I have heard, and it's an assumption of the proposal that's being considered that on the revenue side of things, that if we do go forward with what's currently being considered, we would have an increase of $400,000 from that source in 2014. So I've added this here as a change. So it's an increase in revenue. And then the last one in here is straight from the proposal that Mayor Freisinger just outlined for us. And if it wasn't clear for our listeners or for anybody else, it was the item that talked about reduce the contribution of sales tax to the capital improvement fund. And just the way that this works, so part of the money that goes in the capital improvement fund is we've had, I don't know if a policy or a practice is the best way to describe it. We've had the practice of allocating 25% of our sales tax collections to the capital improvement fund. And in this year's proposed budget, some of that transfer of sales tax to capital improvement included would then, out of capital improvement, fund a couple line items, and within the options as proposed by the mayor, there were two in there. The one was a Tibbetts Creek Manor remodel, which is in the budget proposed for $87,000. The other one was the business plan, the city's marketing. Actually, the way it's actually reads, I think, in the and I do want to refer back to, it's a direct outcome from a goal that we adopted back in May, which was a business marketing package. And so that's the language that's used in the goal, and so that's the way I'm going to refer to it. And the estimated cost for that one was, I believe, $55,000. And so what this 137 is consistent with what Mayor Freisinger just outlined as an option. It is, don't transfer sales tax from general to capital for those projects. In other words, don't do those two projects, and leave the sales tax that we estimated would have funded those, leave them in the general fund. So so the way this works is by taking out the LID guarantee as part of revenue, a forecast of revenue from development services fees, and then the reduction of the transfer out, that totals to $137,000 additional revenue over the proposed budget. Make sense?
I think that third one is 142, not 137.
Yeah, I may have. So these are.
No, it's 55.
You know, I wasn't sure which it was. It's actually based on, I think it's based on my number down. I do have 50 down here. Is it 55 for
The public material we have says 55. I'll ask finance.
Oops. So it would be 142.
Gotcha. It's 50,000 out of the general fund and 5,000 from LTAC, so it's
Okay,
50,000 is
there we go.
so you're right, so that's what it was. So from a general fund perspective, this is consistent, but you're right, it's not for the higher team. So, and then just looking at the proposed expenditure, so this is my take on it, Josh, you know, no, just so you understand, I mean, again, it's, in fairness, you know, to the limit that we're allowed, I did discuss this with some of my other council members, we can't, but we can't, obviously, it's only, this public meeting that the majority of council members are even seeing this idea. So there was on the list of options was a reduction in professional services. There was a reduction in the use of outside legal counsel. And my take on that is I like this idea that the administration went back and took a look and said, you know, there are some things that we can still accomplish our committed levels of service and do it at a reduced cost by using professional services less and by using legal counsel less. So I personally thought that, you know, those are very good proposals from the administration, and I'm working them into this model. The other one was street sweeping. It's just, I think it's somewhat accounting, right? Because we pay for street sweeping out of general fund, and I tell you, go look at it right now. The roads are full. There's drains on all over the place that have got a lot of debris. And for our public works operations to keep that clean, is really a maintenance issue for our stormwater system. And that made a lot of sense to me that we actually fund that. So instead of all of it being out of general fund, this portion of it being out of the, is it the stormwater capital fund? Which one is it?
What it would actually be is we transfer money to the street fund.
Yeah.
And so what we would do is back off that 25,000 in the general fund and instead in storm operations increase their cost.
Okay. So it's still, the result is it's a net less expenditure to the general fund.
Yes.
And that's exactly as you proposed. Of course, the next line item is the dental premium savings, and if anybody really wants, I'll take that out, but I think we should leave that one in. And then the other two were other items as well that are right in the proposal, and the shared service staffing. And the way I understand that is the scope of this is there are 3 positions, one of which is currently unfilled. And it would be taking a potential resource from one position that is filled and reassigning somebody to one of the open positions. And so now that staffing level appeared to, in balance, better meet the overall needs of those 3 positions than compared how it is currently staffed, meaning that we still wouldn't fill the open position. So it's basically, it's a saving in personnel cost by not filling an open position, but reassigning one of the, a staff member to fulfill. And the very specific one we would be filling is what?
So this position would cover the clerk's office front desk.
Okay.
And we would essentially move a person from another department into that role in shared services.
Okay, thank you. And then the last one, again, is the senior planner, which is a delay in hiring. So this budget adds that as a position, and this is a delay. And I understand that this proposal came directly from Development Services themselves. And so this list on here, if you just go to Mayor Feisinger's proposal, what this says to me is out of that proposal, I think keeping our legislative liaison, I would rather keep that. I think that's a benefit to the city. The Route 200, I just heard tonight that we may not have a choice on that, but by putting this together, we're saying that, well, you know, actually, I want to try to keep that as a fare. Let's continue to subsidize the fare box so that it is free in the route that it runs. I think that may change right now. So I don't have it in there because that's my assessment of that part of the proposal. The Arts Trust Fund reduction, by not having it in here, I'm saying I think we should at least maintain as proposed at the $50,000 level. So that's why I don't have that in here. And then the other one is the Parks and Recreation Program reduction. I don't have that in here either. I think that those programs, I really appreciate and respect how they were characterized earlier. I have a special sensitivity to the one program that's for middle school use at the community center, and I at least, and I know some of my other colleagues have a preference to keep that. So my take on that means that the total savings as proposed, by accepting some of those proposals in this model, you see the total savings, and now, of course, you see now by the total, the new expenditures with this savings. So, and now, using the same formula, I call this the council line down here, same beginning fund balance, revenues increased by $137,000, expenditures decreased by $315,000, and now would result in an ending fund balance, as you can see there, which is basically, in this particular model, the ongoing expenditures from the general fund are all covered by ongoing revenues from the general fund. And so this is just a general fund focus. And so it's a starting point that I put out there for consideration and discussion with my colleagues on the council. Eileen?
Just a question. So that 137,000 you have up there under total revenue changes, am I understanding that that was from the Tibbetts Manor remodel piece?
Yes.
And the business plan?
Yes.
And just a refresher, the business plan was funded from, I thought I heard someone say LTAC. Was that?
5,000 of
5,000 from
55,000.
LTAC.
So it would, so if we choose, so in a sense, I guess I am saying in this that to not do that LTAC would have $5,000 back.
Yes, I was just going to say, because with the changes in the RCW, this committee, or this council cannot choose. It has to send it back to the committee, the LTAC committee, to make that decision.
So that would be part of
Yeah.
this as well. Okay.
Well, I like the way that you've portrayed that, and I would suspect that there may be some disagreement in the items that you picked, that we can have some discussion around that. I do have a question about the development service fees. And I know we have not made a decision on that. We're still talking about it. That assumes that those fees would increase by $400,000 in 2014. The proposal that we've been looking at, as I recall, and I'll look to the chair, Land and Shore, for a little bit of help on that, is that we talked about phasing that in over a number of years. That was before we really got into the kinds of discussions that we've been having during budget deliberations and going through it. And so there would be another option. Indeed, if it is our financial policy that we do not subsidize development, and instead of phasing that in over 3 years, we go ahead and bite the bullet and make the adjustments in our budget year next year. How would that impact our, so now that's probably not a figure that you've got on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah.
But we could, a proposal might be, we could say, we will assume the 400,000, but pending the outcome of council action on that agenda bill, that action could direct that we not phase that in over time, but we go ahead and make those fees effective. And as I recall the discussion around those fees, was there a municipal code change that would allow the mayor to make adjustments to those fees once we did that, so that we did not have to go through this whole thing? And there were certain restrictions around that, as I recall, that if an increase was over a certain percentage or something, it would come back to the council, or the council would be involved, or I don't remember the particulars of that, but can you help me, Bob?
Yes, we can. So Diane is going to go through a little bit on the numbers, but it was and just confirm this with the mayor, our recommendation that you go to the full 100%. And that's been working its way through the committee process. So the reason the $400,000 came up last week was because there had been a lot of discussion in committee about phasing it, and that would be like a 2-year phasing. But, philosophically, we believe that it ought to recover 100% of the cost. That was our recommendation to council. Council's got to adopt that policy if they so choose. But Diane's got, I think, some information on the numbers.
Yes, since our last meeting, we've been working on some of the numbers and trying to get an understanding of the operations related to land use and engineering. So when we looked at the data and the information through the end of November, the general fund has been subsidizing, assisting development approximately $623,000 through October 30th. We anticipate that number to be somewhere around $850,000 by the end of the year. When we looked at the proposed budget, and it's an estimate, that number is a little over $1 million, almost $1.1 million. And so we know that long-term, the fees need to be increased in order to cover the costs. And also to be clear, one of the things that we did was doing our analysis, we took out we have about 2.5 employees related to long-range planning. And by long-range planning, I would mean those people that are doing our comprehensive plan, some of the things to do with the urban village. So we didn't really feel like that was appropriate for development to pay for those costs. Those are traditionally costs borne by the general operations of the city. So we tried to be thoughtful in what things we included and excluded.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. So if I understood what you said, if we went for full cost recovery and backed out our long-range planning effort, that would potentially result in increased revenues of
800 to $1 million.
So if we were to be conservative, we could go with that 850 number.
yeah.
All right.
Okay, so, but to really be conservative, it would double that 400,000 up there.
Correct.
So I just wanted to make sure that we all understood that, because it's been an interesting process going through and looking, and it's been a tough process. But so there is some other potential revenue sources for next year, depending on what the council does with that agenda bill.
So I want to say that I am very happy to see the combination of the administration's options that were provided to us and Councilmember Winterstein's proposal on this. I think we avoid 3 potential bad things with this as it's structured. The first of which is, I really appreciate that the transfer of sales tax to the capital improvement fund. Some municipalities might just say, oh, just reduce the amount that you're going to put over. And what that would have done is it would have a little bit, small amount starved the capital improvement fund, right? But by offering specific items to defund, this allows us to do what we need to do and not negatively impact the capital improvement fund. So I like that. I like that. Actually like that the DSD fees are not all in one quick swing. And the reason that I like that is I think that I'm all for fee recovery, but I also think that now that we have a budget in front of us that ends up with a net positive in the ending fund balance, I can afford to be philosophical. And I like the idea that revenue and expenditures are both contributions here. I think that the taxpayer, when they see situations where we solve these problems purely with revenue, I think it creates a certain amount of cynicism. So I think that the fact that we pulled this from both directions to close the gap if we move forward with this particular proposal. I like that it has it on both sides, and I think the suggestions that the administration made were the ones that are up here are really wise. I do want to say, you know, the third thing that we managed to avoid, of course, is cutting any existing staff, and I want to say that I understand as a council member that this will make for extra work for city staff. And so I want to acknowledge that, you know, those things aren't free, and I appreciate that if we move forward with this, that our city staff knows that, you know, that we know how hard they work, and that, you know, they made a sacrifice if we end up with this budget, and I just want to acknowledge that. So there you have it.
Other comments at this time? Josh?
I still don't know if this is on. I think it's on.
Well, I'll keep an eye on the red light.
I'm so
up
used
there,
to
and if
hitting
it's-
the button, you know? So I really appreciate this, Paul, and I really can't find fault with your suggestions. I think they're really spot on, taking the recommendations, well, they're not recommendations, the options, that's right, that were given. And I guess, you know, I want to echo Tola's comments. I appreciate the options, because it sounded at the last meeting when we were first presented with how we could cut the gap, that most of the options involved waiting until July to figure that out. And it's really, in my opinion, you know, shows a significant amount of effort on the part of the city administration to come up with these options available, as hard as they may be in some situations. But the ones that Paul has chosen really focus on efficiencies and, you know, reallocations that are appropriate reallocations, as opposed to program cuts or things that may have a negative long-term impact on revenue. So, you know, cutting the legislative liaison, that could be a cut, but then you're going to have potential loss of revenues in the future. You know, same goes for the parks, you know, recreation program reduction. You know, that I just find that sad to be cutting those sort of programs. So I think this is a really good list. The $400,000 for development services fees, I'm glad that's only about half of the expected, because it sets a target that's somewhat realistic, because now the question's going to be, how do we reach the $400,000? So how do we get the fees there? Because otherwise you don't want to end up mid-year with your budget out of whack, where you say, okay, we promised $400,000 in increased revenue by raising fees, but now we're not delivering on that. So at least it gets us to a reasonable target. So I like these particular choices. You know, I think in terms of the Route 200, I also agree at this point actually leaving it in. You know, the service reductions would not occur until about June of next year. And it also assumes that the legislature doesn't come to the rescue, if at all possible, before you know, that occurs. And so I think it sends a message to the community that we still value the free ride on the 200, that we value the 200 itself, that we want to see this route or something like it kept. Now, if it turns out that circumstances beyond our control force us to give that up, then obviously we'll have a budget savings come June of next year. And then at that point, I would like to have us see what our options are, because I think as a city, we are very committed to good transit service, and we need to have a real conversation about how do we bridge the gap to provide our citizens with an efficient, non-motorized bus service or shuttle or something else. So I would just as soon leave that in at this point. One other comment on the speed camera. It's not on your list, and obviously it has a TBD next to the value. I think it's worth investigating. It could provide revenues, but I wouldn't suggest that revenue should be the driving factor behind doing that. It really comes down to safety. It really comes down to, you know, where in the city that type of camera would be needed or appropriate. And so there may be an opportunity for either the Services and Safety Committee to look at that option with some input from the police department and see, you know, is that something we could think about doing? I know it causes a fair amount of consternation, these cameras, and people do look at them as it's just a way for the city to get revenue, but I see it as a safety issue first and foremost. And, you know, the best way to beat a speed camera is not to speed.
Plus
So-
one.
So I would say don't put it in yet either, but we should investigate it through committee. Thank you. I won't touch that.
Other comments? Stacy?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly. I agree with just about everything that's said so far. I agree with the the options that Paul has chosen to put on the list. And I particularly agree in the sense that the options on here that I wouldn't agree with incorporating it in our budget now are those items that would be increasing revenue without any process. As part of a budget process, I would not support increasing fees for seniors, for the parks programs, the camera. All of those things need to go through a public process, and none of those have been through a process. But I don't need to talk a long time to hear myself talk when I agree with everything that's said so far. And thank you, Paul, very much.
Anyone else? +1 then. Okay, so we have a proposal. There's some other things that we sort of need to talk about before, in my view, we jump to this. And those are the things that are behind the board, because some of those might end up costing more money and adding money to it. So let's move to, let me just summarize. So Paul, I think we've got a starting point. Thank you very, very much for that. Now we can look at perhaps other adjustments before we, and see what the impact of those might be, and then we can have, get back to your budget sheet.
So let's do that. We'll take this now, and I think we have other items to discuss, and I'll continue to maintain these maybe here on the spreadsheet, and we can flip it back and look at it.
That would be
what the
great.
net effect is. And again, this is very general fund focused, and I think there's even some other items that are coming out of some other funds I look forward to speaking about still as well.
So you want to get the light off? What was that? The Ducks. Where are they? Is there a football game tonight, Stacy?
So now we're going to move over to consider some of the other items. And it might help if we highlight the ones that have already been addressed.
So the biz marketing plan at 50,000, or actually 55,000.
Yeah. Sometimes circling them makes it easier to see or crossing them out, but I think yeah.
May I ask what you mean by that? So are you saying that's cut? Are you typically in your past process, you've kind of done like a thumbs up, thumbs down in terms of
Yeah.
We're not
direction?
cutting anything now,
I think
and
it's
we haven't made any decisions.
right.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify.
Just more.
you.
Yeah.
Just a check mark for now instead of a.
Yeah, just the check mark. Don't draw.
Because, this is a little bit different in that there's a body of work here, which is a multiple of these. And looking at it at the fund level, which makes a lot of sense, I think we want to continue to do. And so the general fund items from your proposal are the ones we've already addressed.
Okay. The campus study, that's out of a mitigation fund.
Yeah, and
So,
that one was.
That is money that we received from developers for expansion of city-owned facilities.
discussion around that particular item.
Just more information.
Bob?
So, the city received approximately $5 million in mitigation funds that's been set aside, and it's currently invested. I think one of the things that the mayor has identified previously, as well as probably most of the employees, is one of the greatest inefficiencies that we have here at the city is the fact that we've got multiple facilities. And so just the time lost in traveling back between the various facilities for meetings, customer confusion coming to the wrong facilities, that this $55,000 was really an initial step to do an evaluation of the potential efficiencies and customer service improvements that could be done if there was a consolidated facilities of the city, essentially City Hall, I'm forgetting the name, Northwest, Northeast, Northwest, and, I'm directionally challenged, and, yes, and City Hall, essentially the second floor. So the police station would remain the same, the Public Works Ops building would remain the same, and then obviously many of the recreational facilities would remain the same. But there is an opportunity as well as on this facility, City Hall South, that we'd be looking at it. So the intent was to just do an initial analysis of operations and see, be able to put a number on what it might, what the benefit might be for the community.
So what's the impact to the general fund?
There is no impact on the general fund. It's mitigation dollars.
Do we want to weigh in on that now?
I think I would like to hear more information as we go down. You mean, are you talking about thumbs
Yeah.
up, thumbs down, Fred? Can we have a little bit more information as we go down and then come back and do a thumbs up or down?
Any way you want to do it, Eileen.
Okay.
So,
More
let me,
info.
I do have a question
Paul?
about this one a little bit more. Why don't I see it on the mitigation fund pages 7576? It's multiple double entries here, there, and everywhere.
It's shown as an operating transfer. There should be something like 205,000 as a transfer out. It's 150 for the skate park and 55 for the campus study for a transfer out of the mitigation fund of 205,000, if I remember the numbers.
So Beth
Okay,
Ann,
so-
what page are we on?
We're on page 7-6, operating transfers out, capital improvement fund. So it's from mitigation, transfer into capital improvement. And so that shows over in capital improvement as a, just in a couple pages earlier, as a revenue for other revenue sources. But what I didn't see, and that's what I thought it was, but I didn't see it even as an outlay or expense out of capital improvement either.
7.3.
Yeah, which one, where is it?
7-3, just below the middle
Other
of the
charges
page.
and services?
It says that 55,000 on 7-3 for City Hall feasibility study.
Okay, all right,
Fourth from the bottom.
okay. Okay,
Okay. Any other
Thank you. That
questions
answered
on
my
the
question.
campus,
Yep.
Okay, business marketing plan? We've discussed that. Historical Society study.
So this,
Questions on that?
Where's that coming?
Yeah, that's my question. Where's the money coming from for that?
it's not. So that's, it's not in the budget. At the Safety and Services Committee, when the nonprofits came in and did all of their presentations, essentially the Safety and Services Committee recommended all of the projects that were presented, and then the Historical Society asked for $25,000 for that feasibility study, and that was not included in the budget. However, the committee recommended, when you went through deliberations, that you consider that as part of the analysis.
So where would it come from?
It would come from the general fund.
Now you're like plus $4,000. Now you're like plus $4,000, aren't you?
Yeah,
Something thereabouts.
exactly.
Tibbetts Manor Kitchen remodel. that was
In the capital,
capital, the shift from 25 to 23.
so it's in the general fund proposal.
Okay. Anyone need more information on that?
I guess I'll ask a clarification on that, the change in the sales tax shift. You're not gonna, the 25 to 23 presupposed we pulled all three of those items off. So my assumption would be that we would put the one item that remained that we didn't pull, in other words, that.
We'd
that
still do
amount
the
would be left in.
transfer and fund it out of capital improvement. So the proposal was in the form of a percentage, and I didn't compute the percentage. I just worked with the line item from capital improvement.
Thank you.
So Paul's proposal assumed that we would not do the remodel,
Right.
but that we would fund Arch, and we would fund was that,
No, that it would not fund the business plan, but that it just Arch, basically,
Arch.
at that point.
and the other two were not funded?
Right.
Okay. Station 71, that is fairly significant, addressing safety issues and upgrading that station, $750,000 out of the fire mitigation fund. Anyone need additional information on that?
Just a question, I mean, that's a large dollar amount there for us. Is this something, I know it's for a lot of maintenance and upgrades that are considered to be essential and important. Is this something that can be phased in, a portion of it this year, a portion of it next year? I mean, do the most important of the repairs?
I see Deputy Chief Tryon in the audience. We'll let him take a stab at that.
There's actually two numbers in that 750,000. 250,000 was for two outlying volunteer stations that support the Issaquah. We recommend, based on the conversation with the city attorney, that that not be in the mitigation fund. So now you're down to 500,000. That's, the station was built in 1965, so we're nearing that point where to keep it functional, we're going to have to start doing something. So most of it is bigger dollars. There are lots of little things that we can do, which is some of the air handling, some of the windows and stuff. So small chunks could be handled in $20,000 to $30,000 to $50,000 ranges. It's some structural stuff that we don't know the extent of the issue right now that could pop up.
And that always multiply once you get involved in them.
Affirmative.
And I guess my comment on this, and there's been considerable discussion around the functionality of that station and the impact on that station when Station 78, is it 78, comes online a year from now.
Correct.
And so there have been questions raised, is that station in the right location? Is there a better location to service that? And as we resolve our issues with East Side Fire and Rescue and preserve the partnership, which is a major goal of ours, this may not be the most opportune time to make a significant capital investment in that station.
I wouldn't disagree with you, sir.
So that's
So
my
are we
take
making-
on it.
Are we making comments now, or are we asking questions?
Where? Yep. Yes.
Well, then we got to rewind and go back up to the top. We don't have to, but, okay.
We'll be,
All right.
Josh?
I wanted to follow up on your comment. I tend to agree with on what you said, and I noticed as you were talking that the number was changing on the whiteboard, and it reminded me of a discussion we had last year about some of those funds going into a study to determine siting for a new 71, if you will, or whatever number you want to call it. Because when my car was starting to go, I bought a new one rather than sinking a bunch of money into the old one, and it seems like that might be a good use of funds, which I seem to see up there as the 250, but maybe not the 500. So is that what you just wrote on there, other stations? Is that 250 for the study that we talked about at last year's budget meeting?
No, that was a placeholder until I could have a conversation with the city attorney about the city's comp plan and where money could be utilized. I know that I've spoken with the city administrator and we've talked about, instead of putting the money into Station 71, coming up with a long-term plan of where that station could be, and that was kind of be tied in with the city campus plan and everything else.
So what's the 250?
250 was that Station 74 for us, which is in Preston, and our Tiger Mountain Station, which do move-ups to the city of Issaquah every time that the city's units are busy, need some upgrades for functionality. And given that they support the city, the question to the city attorney was, could that be used? And he said, yes, but he recommends some changes to the comp plan, so that's a longer-term solution. So I do recommend that the 250K be removed from the.
And so there is no allocated money for researching 71 being moved or recited?
Not specifically, no.
Would that be just a future plan when the dust settles?
I think that's an excellent thing that we should be doing, because it fits in with all the other needs that the city's trying to identify.
I agree. Okay, thanks.
Stacy, did you have a? Okay. Northwest Sammamish Road, that's an add. That would be an add to the street fund, it looks like. There was a question on that and some discussion around that earlier. Are there additional questions? Tourism business plan. That is a chamber effort. That's $10,000 that effort is short right now, and it becomes a question of where is that funded from? Josh pointed out that it was equal to or less than $10,000 for a budget impact to the city. It could be cost shared with the chamber, I believe your comment when we discussed that earlier, and so we just need to decide how. Paul?
If I remember correctly, too, this is a 2013 question. So it was a little bit odd. It's really not on, it's not really for our consideration, though, because the current 2013 plan was for professional services monies out of the Economic Development Department to still be put forward to the tourism plan. I think that was the question we had in front of us, which is, it's a one-off. It's not a 2014 budget question. So I'm not sure how to handle this. Bob was nodding. What I was saying was correct, I think.
I think that's what he was nodding. He wasn't
That's correct.
offering an answer on how we
Well, no,
should
it was
handle
just
Well,
that.
the facts
So,
out.
Yeah, the issue, I think it's a $25,000 contract that they're looking at. The 10 from this year's budget essentially would have enabled them to get the contract signed and get started with the balance in terms of how the bills flow of the 15 for next year. And the question I think that was kind of asked was, should there be some skin in the game from other partners, which is that $10,000, which was what was that question?
Per capita human services funding, we're working towards a $10 per capita goal. There's $72.50 in the budget, in the general fund.
So we moved from, the mayor moved the per capita amount from $8.50 to $9. The goal was $10 over time, but given the current state of the finances, she couldn't do it all this year as she had hoped to in the previous year.
So this is an increase.
Yes, it's an increase of 50 cents per capita. But, yes, I'm sorry, thanks for that clarification. It is in the budget, so it's not like an add. It would, if you chose not to do that, it would be a delete.
Reverse 911.
This is not in the budget, but was brought
Previous
up.
goal, some discussion around whether we wanted to continue to pursue that or not.
I'll ask, did we have any comment from the chief on that at services or anywhere?
We didn't request one, no.
And while the police department is a user, you know, one of the, usually the biggest benefit is just in an emergency management situation. Or if you have, say, a water line that goes out and you want to notify a certain neighborhood that's affected by that line, you'd be able to put notices out to those individuals all done. It's like a kind of a robocall in directed areas.
School district, when there's a storm-related, school was canceled, they blast it out to everyone.
Oh, I had the totally wrong idea what this was, so thank you for clarifying. I thought it was figuring out who had called when somebody dials 911
Oh,
from
no,
there. From there.
they're all over you there. Stacy?
So it's not currently funded, which means we would be determining whether we wanted to add it to the budget.
Correct.
And what fund?
We've not had, this has not come to committee? Is that right?
This was in
Was
the
that council goal?
Well, it has been a council goal. It was also in the CFP for 2014. And so I had asked why it wasn't in the budget since it was in the CFP. But Fred's right. I think, gosh, we talked about this 5 years ago or something. So it's been a goal.
So I wasn't here 5 years ago. And the reason I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, I just don't know that I know enough about it. And I'm wondering what the harm is of just having it come to committee, because then we could decide to put it in the budget then, unless it's an emergency.
So it's been on the capital facilities plan, and there is some funds, but not the full 15 in the equipment replacement account. The city does have a system through King County. It's just not as robust as the system that's being proposed to be purchased here, which is our own system. So I wouldn't necessarily call it an emergency. I mean, there's still something available to use, but that's why it wasn't included in the budget.
And I guess in response, there could be, in the letter from the council to the administration with the budget adjustments, a work item identified to explore that in the first quarter or second quarter or so, and then it goes through the committee through our normal process. So that is an option, that would continue to move it forward.
Because then everybody's up to speed on it.
Sure. Issaquah Highlands Shop, this is completing the Public Works Ops shop up behind or next to the water storage tank.
It's not completing it. It started.
Just,
Study.
Oh,
it's just design.
it's just
Design.
the design.
Otherwise, it'd be a big shed, which it might be anyway at the end of the
Thanks.
day. Just costs a
So I
little
have a
more money.
question.
Thank you, Josh, yes. Stacy?
What was the process that was used to determine that this would be the site that we wanted the maintenance shop?
It was identified in the Issaquah Highlands, I believe in the Park Point swap, and the council looked at it. There was a need somewhere within the Highlands for a storage facility, I don't know that it was called a shop per se, but a place to stockpile materials, so for things for sanding the roads and so on. And that was a spot that was identified, and the council at that point said that was an acceptable place. There was community input, some community input, and as I recall, people who were not enthusiastic about that, and so then there have been proposals in which people said, well, maybe we could put it somewhere else, maybe we could put it near the pea patch or switch it around, but essentially having 160 designs what a facility would look like.
Thank you.
No, I was just going to say that
Yeah,
was.
Tola?
That's okay. I'm sorry. Just was going to say that it's not just the ops, but it's also the parks maintenance facilities because it's right down the road from Central Park.
Tola?
So my concern on this one would be, we may have a different centroid of the city come next year in terms of where things physically are in the city. And it may well be that where we want to put things might look different. So I'd sort of would be hesitant to move forward with this, given the open question about Klahani.
Noted at this time. So that completes the list, and that completes everything that's on the board, and I believe the discussion around the mayor's options that, and then Paul's summary of his view of those options. So I'm going to suggest that before we get into our deliberations, I forgot to call for public comment at our last budget workshop, and typically we do that at the end. So I would suggest that we have public comment now, because I know that there are a number of people in the audience, I believe, who would like to comment. And so I'm going to open it up for public comment at this time and ask, is there anyone desiring to comment on our proposed budget discussion and deliberations? Matt, you want to go first? Or so if you just identify yourself and try to keep it to 30 minutes or less. No.
Right. My name is Lee Mancini, and I live in the South Cove neighborhood. And I'm married to Dan Greenwood, who is a resident. His father had owned the property since the 30s, known as Greenwood Point, and even a portion of the Lake Sammamish property that's we're talking about with regards to the Northwest Lake Sammamish Parkway. And very quickly, I do want to apologize to the council and you folks for having my cell phone go off during the meeting. I thought I turned it off, but I don't mean to show any due respect, and please accept my humility. But my comment is we met with the city planners in the summertime, the engineering groups, to talk about options and really trying to understanding more from a drill down, like from an engineering point of view, if you will. What are the challenges with regards to the Lake Sammamish Road that we're facing, just to gain us lay people, the neighborhood, to understand really what are we up against. And my message is understanding that pinch point is kind of the answer to the big question. It's the $100,000 question, and I believe it is money well spent because it tells us exactly what we're up against. And I don't, engineering, whatever the solution is or the challenges face, that's where the problem seems to lie. And and the broader point, my comments are for two purposes. Again, the safety aspects of it, but also we're the gateway, I-90, from west to east, east to west. Here we are having a road that looks fairly antiquated. Doesn't look like it's been improved upon, except for some white lines, bold lines, and shifted a little bit. But as a person that's lived in the neighborhood for 50 plus years, I have not seen change, even though it's now it's a city road. So my point is, again, just briefly, I'll recap, is I think it's money well spent, especially if you've seen the improvements the city of Bellevue has made along West Lake Sammamish Parkway. There's a beautiful sidewalk, raised sidewalk, curbs, it's wide. There's the green space between the road and the sidewalk. It's beautiful. So just connecting that final hinge piece, I think it would speak well of the city and what we're trying to communicate and having people come to the city, as well as safety, safety, safety. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Matt?
Good evening, members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I really appreciate it, and I will keep it very brief. Two comments tonight. One, I wanted to add some input on the tourism plan discussion that was just mentioned. As a quick reminder, we view this as a partnership between the city and the chamber, looking at funding from the LTAC, from the city's general fund, and from the chamber. We are happy to put in, with our next year's budget, at least $5,000 to support it. We believe this is something we're really committed to. We think it can make a big difference for the community, and I think everyone's identified that the next step is to have an expert come in and say, for a community of our size with these unique tourism assets, here's what the plan should look like. So if that's helpful, I hope it is. We'd be happy to contribute in that way as well. So hope that's helpful. Also wanted to speak to the sector, the industry analysis, the marketing plan work that's under your consideration. We, as a member of the Economic Vitality Commission, I know this is something that came out of the SWOT analysis and was really kind of affirmed with a luncheon speaker we had last Friday who spoke about how Issaquah has a number of assets that are just ripe for better promotion. And he talked about the build-out of Costco and the school system and all the things we know are economic assets. And it was just very clear to me at that point, as it relates to this conversation, how important it is to further identify and then promote those assets. The chamber would encourage you to look at the marketing plan and business recruitment efforts and sector analysis as something that has a very clear and I think very quick payback period. These are efforts that you make the investments and you see the return in the new businesses that come here, the new attention that you receive regionally and statewide, something that we certainly support. So we just urge your support of that in the next budget cycle. So thank you very much again for the chance to speak.
Thank you. Is there anyone else desiring to speak? Anyone else desiring to speak? Okay, then we will. Did you want to come up again? Let's make it short.
It'll be 10 seconds. Our budget cycle starts in April, so $5,000 in April. Make sure that's clear.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Okay. So we've got a starting point, thanks to Paul. I guess I would look to see how you would like to deal with Paul's starting point, whether there is an agreement around his proposal, or why don't we look at potential adjustments to that now and then go to the budget adjustments listed on the board and go through that.
Fred, may I make one suggestion?
Of
First
course.
is that, I would be open if any of our colleagues wanted to maybe add something to the list that's on the board. I mean, we put that list up there, but I don't know that anything that says that that's the only list of items that we are
Okay.
going to consider. And we've all had many days and nights. I'm sure you're ruminating on it all the time, and maybe there's another. But I just think we should make that opportunity
I think
available.
that's an excellent suggestion. So if you've got some others that you'd like to put up there to remove or to add, now would be the time.
I just ask, unless there's any questions of Anne anymore, I think we could give her leave if she chose to go home. Was there any other questions by the council on that?
Seeing none then?
No.
Oh.
Eileen.
Just a little bit more information, and in regards to the Highland Shop, there was a comment in regards to that this is beneficial to you for equipment storage, and I just wanted to understand your thoughts and plans.
We would share the space with Public Works Operations on storing some equipment and some materials. Not a lot. We wouldn't have as much space as Public Works Operations, but it would be a shared space with Public Works
Still could
Operations.
You could still operate out of the current facility that you have without any, I mean, probably some additional gas to go up and down the hill, but not, that would be.
Yes, and we're doing that, as you know, already, so.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
then I guess you're now free to go. So any additions Any, okay, so,
So do we want to put it back up?
we
Do
do.
that?
Mm-hmm. There we are.
So it takes a second for this to power on.
Okay.
I don't have to hold my arm up. Let me try it one more time.
Well, it's getting through.
Tim, it's being stubborn. I don't see it powering on.
Well, then maybe we should start with the whiteboard.
Clap on, Josh, clap on.
Well, just for all you Ducks haters, they're down 17-0 at the halftime.
Quack.
Wah, wah.
Okay.
Tim, it's the standby button.
Okay, so,
So
there's
this-
a,
it's the same thing that I had up there before, but I just put in there what it looked like to add an expenditure of the Historical Society feasibility study. There is one other item on the whiteboard related to the general fund. It has to do with retaining last year's per capita human services funding at $8.50. That's $72.50. I did not put this on the spreadsheet, but I'm sorry.
That amount is already included. That was for council consideration if you wanted to do a reduction.
That's right. So I do not have it in,
Right.
I didn't add it in here as a reduction. So it's just the other, a general fund item that's on the whiteboard that I did add the feasibility study. I didn't add the human services funding. I figured 7250, we could add that in our heads.
Tola?
And can you show the last bit on column H? Because I think that's where you, there you go. $4,085.
So, and there's one more column. The proposed budget had a ratio of ending fund balance to, as a percent of expenditures of 20.9, and this model has at 22.2.
Okay, so,
I would, the items that were on, well, should we go through them at the expenditure level, or just want to, you want to,
is there anyone
do you want to do
who
an up
would
or
like to
down?
make any adjustments to this?
So the adjustment
Bob?
from the prior version is the study. Go ahead.
On the Historical Society feasibility study, I did answer before that you could take it out of the general fund. There is one additional option, but it would require an additional step, which would be to send it back to the LTAC committee and request funding out of LTAC, because there is sufficient money in the carryover balance. But it would take a whole nother process to make an amendment to the budget at some point, but that is an option to you as well.
Does that qualify for LTAC funding?
So it is, much of it is how do you bring in programs, feasibility programs to the community. A lot of that may result in overnight stays. So I'm just saying it's an option if you want to consider it.
Eileen?
I guess I'm questioning whether that would really qualify under the new regulations of LTAC. And we would be under the assumption that the members would agree to this after we already increased our budget over and above what had been recommended by a fair amount. So, just thoughts.
I'm comfortable leaving it in general fund if this winds up being what we have. You know, I think when you look at the depot, we have it's such an incredible resource, and I'm eager to see the Historical Society figure out how to make the most of that. Where I lived previous to Washington was a very nice suburb of the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul, but it didn't have anything like the depot. So I'm comfortable seeing it here, and would love to see how that conversation goes.
Other comments? I'm going to go ahead and call the question then. All those in favor of adding that as an expenditure, thumbs up or down? 1, 2, 3. Wow. Okay. Reduction in professional services. Any questions about that one? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Reduction in use of outside legal counsel. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Street sweeping. 1, 2, 3. Shared services. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Senior planner. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Revenue.
So we should say, I think, a word about this, in that, and I'm going to repeat something I said earlier, and I recognize and I understand the LID Guarantee Fund as a vehicle available to municipalities in Washington State to be as proposed, and but what this proposal is saying that for our planning in 2014, we're not going to do it. We wouldn't use any of that balance as revenue for 2014.
Can you explain a little more, in your opinion, the rationale so that the public understands, instead of using those dollars as a transfer into the general fund, what does it get us by keeping it in the guarantee fund? Or no, I don't want to put it on you, but yeah, maybe Bob wants to answer it, or.
For my reasoning is that I'm not sure that what it gets us is, in my mind, of our new policies, our restated policies, which we recently adopted, and I'm not going to miss the opportunity to acknowledge that the primary author, our finance director, Diane Marcotte, that we mostly accepted what her proposal was, and it's just etched in my mind that a key one. And the only one really I got commentary from the citizens about before we approved then had to do about ongoing revenues, covering ongoing expenses. And I don't view the LID Guarantee Fund as ongoing revenue. It's really that simple. And there is a purpose for that, and it also can play this other role. So it's that discipline that if that our ongoing expenses are covered by ongoing revenue, but even the way that our policies are written, there's some room in there, and I outlined this a couple weeks ago too. Is that some on one-time expenses, there could be funds that are used together with others to leverage to help the city acquire an asset. Maybe we can get something going related to transportation. That might be a one-time cost. I mean, I think our policies are written that way. But we didn't have any of those proposals, and so far none of us have brought any of those forward. So this allows us to just meet that objective, lacking those. And there was nothing in this proposal, and we haven't brought it forward again to move anything to a contingency fund, which we recently created. So lacking contingency fund or any type of way to use ongoing revenues for a one-time thing, such as acquiring an asset, then this was the other piece that had the ongoing expenditures covered by ongoing revenues. That's my thinking.
And I just realized something. We vetted the expenditures, but there were some options that we really need to run through, I think, and those are the ones that are not included up there.
May, as a point of order, Fred, that was kind of my thinking when I asked if anybody else wanted to add anything, and so there was an initial proposal, and there wasn't any, maybe I wasn't clear, but,
Okay, well, let me just review then what this does. We have agreed to keep the, to continue to fund our legislative liaison person. Can someone refresh my memory on the Route 200?
subsidizing the fare box. That was a proposal to stop subsidizing the
Stop-
fares. So it was an
okay.
expenditure to subsidize the fare box.
We're keeping that in the budget because we don't know
We
what'll
don't know
happen
the out-
by June, and if the route gets saved, then we'd like to continue subsidizing.
Okay. Then the Parks and Rec program reduction, we are keeping that one. And the Arch Trust Fund, we are continuing to support the Arch Trust Fund at $50,000. Okay. Okay, now going to revenue.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to, the parks programs, including the teen center,
We're not
are being
reducing,
kept, yes.
where they're being kept.
Yes,
Right.
okay, making sure.
Okay. So now, the development service fees, year
this is-
one of 2 years.
So this is a planning number, because we haven't taken formal action, but based upon the preliminary information that we have, this is offered as a conservative way to forecast additional revenues above the proposed budget.
Okay, everyone okay with that?
So I was going to say that the budget will not be in balance unless you put that revenue into the budget. So if the council doesn't adopt it, then you have to understand that you have a $400,000 hole in the budget.
I understand that.
But we know how to balance it now,
But we know how to
That's
balance. it.
correct.
right?
And for what it's worth, I like to describe it as balanced. I think there's a broad definition, and what this one does is match ongoing revenues and
Revenues and
ongoing
expenditures.
expenses.
Okay, then the transfer of sales tax to the capital improvement fund, this one is a little more tricky.
Because it is explicitly removing from capital improvement, the improvements to the Tibbetts Creek Manor kitchen remodel and the professional marketing package, which was one of our adopted 2014 goals. And the number is real, even though it says 55, the number is correct because it was 50 out of general fund, 5 out of LTAC. So that's what this proposal entails. So to you to reflect this and to modify it is actually changing those items in the capital improvement fund as well.
So the 50, I'm sorry, I missed what you said on the 55. So the 5,000, the council really cannot cut
Comes from LTAC.
because it has to go back to the LTAC. And that
Yeah,
was actually for the social media marketing, and then the 50 is actually the study. That's coming out of the fund, the transfer.
Say that again?
So there was 5,000 that came out of LTAC, which was the social media marketing that was going to be done, and then 50,000 was
The
for
general
the
fund.
general fund transfer to that account.
And the social marketing will remain there and will happen this year. Is that accurate? That's the $5,000 for them?
Oh, I thought he took it. That's what threw me for a loop. Okay. Got it.
You're okay. Because you're taking the 137, which is the 87 and the 50.
Yep.
Yes.
So we need to decide on the Tibbetts Manor remodel. There we are. And and the business plan. And we've taken care of the arch contribution, so we're okay there. So, any discussion around the Tibbetts Manor remodel?
It's part of the broader discussion that I brought up that we can't resolve tonight about the future of the city's involvement with the manor and whether it's a
That's,
money loser or not. And, you know, in my opinion, it's something we need to take a hard look at. And so I'm hesitant to support doing the remodel of the kitchen and sink 87,000 into it if it later turns out that we want to get out of the manor business. And I don't know where along the line next year we talk about that. Does it have to be a goal? Can it just be a committee level discussion? I leave that to leadership to decide, but I think we should have that conversation. It's apparent to me that the barn is a good revenue source. It's a good community asset. I'm less clear about the manor. It has value. I don't know the answer, but I'm hesitant to do this until maybe next year if we decide we're really keeping it.
+1.
Okay, so,
Wait, Stacy.
Well,
Stacy?
I was going to just say that the comments that we have, I think I or somebody else asked a question about whether we would see an increase in revenue that would cover this remodel, and I wasn't persuaded that we would, so I would support taking it
Removing
out.
it.
Yeah.
Are we ready to vote? 1, 2, 3 to remove? Okay. The business plan? Discussion.
Yes, Fred.
Paul?
This is a professional marketing package. And I know we've been kicking it around as a business plan. I'm reading the goal in here. This is
It's a-
develop a professional marketing package. That's quite different than a business plan. So I just think that's very, needs to be very, very clear. And I appreciate I love it when citizens get involved. And we got a letter from our Economic Vitality Commission, and they made that effort. And I have considered that. However, I have reservations still about going forward with this. I think that I think there's a step missing still in my mind, and I'll just I have a little bit of familiarity with marketing, and though I'm not a professional marketer, and I'm not comfortable at this point that we're really. I haven't been convinced that the city doing a marketing pack, I'm not even sure what a marketing package is, honestly, is really positioned to do this and do this effectively at this point. So I'm not going to support this expenditure.
Eileen?
But I don't believe the city was intending to do this. They were going to be hiring an outside source to help with this plan and putting it together. So it wouldn't be the city themselves putting this plan together.
Stacy?
Well, the step I think is missing is the overarching, and I'll say it one more time, it's that horrible word, vision. And out of that flows strategic planning, and then out of that flows any kind of business plan or business marketing plan or package or whatever you want to call it. And so I'm not going to support it because I think it's out of turn.
Paula?
Well, so I'm trying to figure out why I don't want to do this, why I don't want to spend this money. And I think it comes from, I think that we have in the last couple of years shown our commitment to economic vitality in the city by expanding the Economic Development Office and by impaneling the Economic Vitality Commission. But I feel like there's a lot of work that I'm still hoping to see from all of those folks before I think we're ready for a marketing package. And some of that comes back to Stacy's good argument about some of the direction that we want to have as a city. But I also feel like this is a little early, and that I'm still waiting to see I'm excited about what we're going to see out of economic development and economic vitality, and I think this kind of comes after that.
I'm looking at the response to question 3, that provide more information on the business marketing plan. And when I look at that, it's a 2-phase process. In 2014, it will include a sector/industry analysis. The work includes review of data, trends, and current business climate, as well as stakeholder interviews to determine the sectors, industry with growth potential that fit with Issaquah's comparative economic advantages. The information will allow us to focus resources on sectors that offer the most potential results for business attraction. So that's phase 1 and a discussion of the work that would be accomplished in 2014. In 2015, that is the actual development of a marketing plan, utilizing the results of the previous work, and that describes the specifics around the development of and implementation of the marketing plan itself. This, what is being proposed is a 2-year process that begins to develop the information that you need for the eventual development of a marketing plan. So I don't know whether that's helpful or not. I believe it is, but we're going to have an opportunity here soon to decide. Stacy?
If I was going to spend $80-some thousand, it would be to develop a vision first.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay.
Plus 1.
So the question is, do we fund that or not?
Which way is?
Do we cut it or do we fund it?
Well-
Thumbs up means you agree with, to cut it.
Okay, thumbs up to cut, thumbs down to keep. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's 4 to cut and 2 down. So we agreed to cut it.
And are
Yes,
there,
Paul?
are there any other items on the table that were general fund related, not already addressed?
Human services funding.
Yeah, thank you, that's right.
That was, yeah,
That was the only other one.
that's the only other one.
Okay.
So, and, well, that's on the whiteboard.
Right, but
So not on your
Not on your-
proposal there,
Let me add it.
okay? And so it's a question of,
Was it just for grants or overall grant funding?
That would go for the grants.
that's how we fund the grants.
Yep.
Okay, so discussion around that topic.
Sure.
Paul?
I'd like to fund it as proposed by the mayor.
+2?
I'd have to disagree from my perspective. I don't think that, I have 2 reasons. One, I don't think that the burden should fall squarely on us as a city to increase our funding for organizations that rely on multiple sources of income. If there were funding increases across the board from other jurisdictions, from other third-party sources, then I would be more than happy to follow suit. But it seems to be placing a burden on us to be taking the vanguard of increasing that amount of funding. Number 2, our per capita is potentially going to increase just in terms of the sheer number, regardless of what you increase that to. and that's going to affect the bottom line as well. And I recognize it's only $7,000, and in that sense, the points that I raise are not strong objections, that I would lose any sleep over it. But at the same time, again, I just don't see us as having to solely bear that burden. But it is what it is.
Other comments? Eileen?
Well, I don't think we're solely bearing the burden. I think every single one of these agencies have multiple places that they are supporting and granting them dollars. So we are one of many out there, and it's $7,000.
Other comments? So, someone help me out. What does thumbs up mean?
Keep it. Thumbs up means that we approve the subtraction.
Exactly.
Of the
Right.
budget.
So a thumb up means keep the reduction from the budget. A thumbs down rejects the budget proposed change. So in other words, we keep the 7250 in.
So
Is
thumbs
that clear?
down?
Does that help?
Up is cut, down is keep.
Yes.
Right.
1, 2, 3.
5 to 1.
5 to 1.
Okay, so what that looks, you turn this into a 0, and we're all happy again.
Okay, so now it's time to go to the whiteboard, I believe.
Actually, and before we may, I would just like to make a few comments about the general fund in general, because we're saying we've wrapped up the general fund.
Nope.
And, I'm sorry?
Let's see.
Yeah.
There are no other general fund
That's right.
items on there.
Right.
Okay, I'm with you.
So there's a couple things that this general fund budget does. It does add the human services manager, which is consistent with some of our goals and our council goals. And so I'm pleased to be able to say that, mid-year we'll be able to get that going. It also retains the additional headcount for the police, which is, I was pleased to see that as well. We had a couple other, there is another planner for the organization, and so there was, and so all of those, and I actually have them up here, so let me see if I can find them again. All of those original positions. So we had the police officer position, and the 2 inspector positions. One of them, I think, is the delayed one. So that is, we are doing constructive things. We may have just balanced our inflows and our outflows, but this still does some constructive things, increasing the level of service, from our, to the citizens. And also, one area we had a question about what have we gained. I think Councilmember Goodman asked the question. We addressed it last time about what has the reorganization gained, and maybe we're going to discuss this some more. I don't know if that was your intent or not, but I see in this budget that there is from year over year for development services, still a reduction in the expenditures from 2013 to 2014. And so I'm pleased to see that, but I'm just as, I think also, I think we're going to be coming back for more information about the effect of the reorganization and so I just wanted to point out some of those things that are by basically wrapping up our work on the general fund. Just wanted to point out some other things that we haven't discussed much, but means we would be approving.
Other comments? To the whiteboard. WD-40? So, the first was starting at the top. Well, now I guess we can cross a few of those off, can't we? So the business marketing plan is off. The tourism business plan is at 5,000. I think so. Well, that one was withdrawn by the administration.
The Historical Society study is
That one is,
the human services per capita.
comes
funding.
off.
We just,
We did that.
Tourism business plan, the chamber offered it at
5,000 for that.
we haven't.
Okay, the campus study. Discussion or questions? I see a lot of enthusiasm around. Are you ready to vote on that?
You know, I just want to say on the study, I agree with what Bob said. I mean, I think there really is a value in determining whether we can increase efficiencies as a city. And, I mean, I think just without even doing the study, the answer is probably yes, but, you know, how do we get there? I'm also concerned, as I am in the transportation arena, that we do studies, but then we don't implement those studies. And I feel like we're not quite ready to do that. Like, if we undertook this study in 2014, we wouldn't be necessarily going out and beginning this reorganization or implementation of this. I mean, unless you're going to tell us that that's part of the plan for 2014, but I just sort of worry that it's going to sit on a shelf for a while.
Eileen?
Granted, I agree with you in that regards, but I think sometimes you need to, I mean, this is $55,000, and you need to take that big vision look. I mean, if we're looking out for a number of years, where are we gonna site this campus? Is it gonna be here? Is it gonna be downtown? Is it gonna be someplace? I mean, we have to begin to look at property. And if we are going to move this campus and try to bring everyone together, if we're looking at a large piece of property to move to, we better be looking at it now so that we know where our plans are moving to. It's
And I
50
guess, you know, over the past 2 years at leadership, we've had an opportunity to talk around this issue as certain parcels of property potentially became available. And I'm not going to mention which ones here, but, and as far back as when I first came on the council, we began to acquire property around, between the community center and the new city hall. And so you've really got to start somewhere and have a plan. And I'm not sure we need a vision to do that just yet. And it's not like we're going to go out. I'll call on you in just a second,
Okay.
Stacy. You're next.
Okay.
But we've got to start somewhere, and I believe that is money well spent to begin to try to define what, how we're going to serve our citizens. Stacy?
Thank you, Fred. So, I think we have our hands full already, and I think we have some ongoing projects that we need to finish. Not necessarily in this order, but I think they're important. Number one, we have our transportation issues that we're looking at. And I don't want to take the eye off the ball of that. I think that is extraordinarily important. I think it is a priority. And I am concerned about putting any money aside, $55,000, any energies into focusing on building a new municipal campus. I do not believe that our citizens would think that that is a priority for the city right now. I have no doubt that there are efficiencies. I don't need a study to tell me that it would be much better for most of our employees to be in the same building, and we would have wonderful meeting space, and all of that would be very grand. That's just not where I believe that we should be spending our time right now. I also believe that, as was alluded to earlier, that I do not think that we have the full and complete and finished story of the reorganization. And I think we have some work to do to finish, in my opinion, and to understand the value of that and where we are in that process. So I do not support spending money on a campus study, and it's not just about $55,000.
Any other comments? Paul?
Thanks, Tola.
No, I was going to make a comment,
Go
and I
ahead,
was
go
just
ahead.
trying to be
Go ahead,
gentlemanly.
please.
So I have ongoing concerns about consultants, and what this to me seems like something that if a good piece of property came up and the city thought it looked like a good situation, I think that they would figure out a way to come talk to the council about it, and I don't think we would worry too much if we hadn't spent $55,000 on a consultant. So I think given where we're at in being very cautious financially right now, I would rather err on the side of caution and not spend the money. I do understand, Eileen, the idea of, you have to start planning early, but as Fred has alluded to, there have been some conversations over the last couple of years on this topic. And like I said, I have no fear that the city would be caught flat-footed if the right property came along.
Paul?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add, but I'm of a like mind, from what I heard from Tola and from Stacy earlier, and the particular, a little year ago, I guess I'm going to add something, when we passed the Central Issaquah plan, and I look at what this budget is shaping up to be, and some of the real visionary, ambitious vision that was outlined in the central area, and that's helping that come about is one of the reasons I ran for office in the first place, and that's where I hope to put my energies, and consolidating and focusing on maybe rebuilding a campus. It's good for our I like Josh mentioned, it's for all the reasons that were given. I agree that there could be some improvements, and it's not on the top of the list right now for me. I think there's other things I want to see us get going, and then direct our energies and resources towards before we would move forward on a campus.
Any other comments? So, up is cut, down is support. Up is cut, or not included.
You're supporting the proposed cut.
Okay.
So, 1, 2, 3. Surprised me.
Hand wringing for that unanimous vote.
Station 71, comments? Are you ready to vote?
I apologize. I should have asked this question earlier.
Okay.
For Diane. Is there there's a time limit when we collect mitigation money, and you maybe have answered this question before, are we at the limit of any of this, and is part of this item related to, and Greg is holding up 3 fingers. You understand my question?
I think we still have a year or 2 left, or 3 years. We have about 3 years left before we have to spend the money, before we lose it.
Okay, thank you.
In connection with this, in case it wasn't clear earlier, I do want to see us take a look at potentially using funds next year for moving Station 71, or at least investigating, not actually moving, but investigating other options and determining if there's a more appropriate siting to put money into. So it's not a budgetary item, but it's sort of I don't know if it's even a goal, it's just a thought.
Just as a reminder, we've got a work session that's going to talk about East Side Fire and Rescue, a resolution, pretty detailed discussion next, I believe it's Tuesday on the 12th. So there'll be an opportunity to chat about that a little bit then also.
I have a question.
Yes, Tola.
So we're fortunate to have one of our two EFR representatives here. I'm just wondering what, I'm not sure I know what Eileen was thinking about this, so I'd like to know what she thinks.
Well, I guess I probably need more information also, but as far as Station 71 is concerned, it is, as Deputy Chief Tryon had told us earlier, a facility that is in dire need of a lot of work. And so as opposed to putting the dollars into it here, I think we look at the proper location of fire stations for the best value and the good for all, this is not the location that this fire station needs to be in any longer. So we do need to look out long-term as far as the relocation of this station, but also just the facility is not accommodating current-day fire services. And I'm not sure if that was helping you, Tolo, in what you were asking.
I'm asking whether you think we should remove this item or not.
We've got, how many, it belongs here, doesn't it? I mean, and there's still the time to leave this sitting here, this of course, yes. Of course, yes. Leave, I believe the $500,000 should remain with Station 71.
Should it be in the budget for next year?
No, we do not need it in the budget.
That
for
was-
next year.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, do you have a question? I don't know. Let's say up is, did you have a question?
I'm just not sure I understood what I heard. Am I hearing that, Eileen, am I hearing that we could take this out of the budget for next year and you would be comfortable?
I guess I need to understand. So if we say, yes, take this out of next year's budget, these dollars still remain here for the use of the fire station as we move forward and are ready to look for a new housing and relocation of 71.
You're correct. The money that is from the mitigation fund can only be used for fire-related service. It cannot be redirected to another purpose.
So my thoughts are that I'm thinking it's premature to decide whether we want to spend $500,000 upgrading Station 71. I'm kind of thinking that's what I'm hearing, but I wasn't exactly sure with the, anyway, okay.
So if I may comment, that's what I heard. I heard that I'm basing my decision on the understanding that in the very near term, we will be able to evaluate the location, and it could be that stays, and then we will want to probably do some upkeep and maintenance, or it could be that station should be relocated, and these funds could be used for that purpose. And that
The relocation
for the relocation, and I would rather put 500,000 into that. So that's how I'm basing my decision on. I'm not going to be in favor of spending the money in 2014.
And I think there's a common understanding now of what the question is. And so up is to remove, down is to keep. 1, 2, 3? Okay. Northwest Sammamish Road. Comments? Josh?
I'll kick it off. This one pains me in many ways because I understand the neighborhood's concerns. And it's a concern that dates back many, many years, and it dates back to the time of annexation. And, whether it was an understanding on the part of residents about what might happen, or whether it was an expectation, or whatever you want to call it, there is definitely a sense from the community in the South Lake Sammamish neighborhoods that something needs to be done. And it's certainly apparent to me that there are issues and concerns that I have about that particular stretch of roadway and some benefits that can occur on that stretch of roadway. The question, though, is whether it's appropriate as an addition to the 2014 budget. And as has been pointed out, Joe Forkner pointed it out at the last meeting, and I think, Paul, you've talked about it as well. it's not in our TIP, it's not in our capital plan. And we have a process by which projects such as this and others around the city are prioritized and budgeted and then implemented. And I think it's good that it's gotten back on the radar, so that we can take a look at doing the work that needs to be done to move this forward. But I don't know where it fits in the matrix of all the projects that we have. It doesn't appear to fit in 2014, in my opinion, because we haven't, I don't think we've vetted it through the process of prioritization like we have with the other 2014 projects. If we were to add this into the list, and I appreciate the CFP now appears to be the updated list on the website, so if we took the current list that the council prioritized, it's not on there. It would have to be added in somewhere, and where would it fall? Would it be more important than Gilman Boulevard safety improvements? Would it be less important than, Dogwood Street improvements? I don't know, and I don't want to unilaterally be the one to make that sort of decision, because we have a process and a committee, and as a whole council, the way that we do that. So I'm very sensitive to the concerns that have been raised, and I think that we should add this into the matrix for consideration next year so that it can go back through the committee process. We can continue to hear from residents. We can actually think about doing something. But I would hate to just drop it in all of a sudden now to the exclusion of lots of other good projects, because you could also look and say, I'd like to see us do the Gilman improvements. I'd like to see us do, Dogwood Street. I'd like to see us do Providence Point intersection realignment, which didn't even make the CFP. And we've heard from, tens of people that that's a really important project for their neighborhood. So it's a tough one for me because I want to see us do it. I just don't know if 2014 is the time to do it.
Other comments?
Yeah, I've given a lot of thought to this one as well, and I had committed via email to one of the residents of the area that I would bring it up with our colleagues to discuss that. And I'm glad that we've done, and I've learned about the proposal, and I've actually been out on the road a couple times and understand what that location is like, the scope of this one. But it's very sympathetic. Boy, it's easy to envision a really nice parkway, especially with the separated walkway and the greenery like was just added. And yet, that's actually not what we're debating right now. This is just to fix kind of that pinch point. And so as a matter of kind of good discipline, I'm glad we've discussed it, but this would be a new project, and like Councilmember Sher just said, that I'd like to see it. I want to have faith in the process that we have to identify transportation improvement projects and have them go through this process. And this would be a new one, rather than the complete redesign of the roadway, actually fixing a smaller area. This would be a new one, and I'd like to see it go through that process. So I'm going to be looking hard to make that happen a year from now. But that means putting it back in the queue and going through the process. But when people come forward and really good arguments and comments have been made, that's how it gets done. But I want to respect the process that we have and have it go through that process. So my intent this year is to not add this to the project list, but to recommend it to be added to the TIP and the facilities plan for next year.
It's hard for me to, argue against what I've heard from my colleagues. I'll just tell you that in my recent doorbelling experience, it's one of the neighborhoods or parts of the city that I doorbelled 100% in was this area. And other than plastic bags, which still don't resonate very positively with a few folks over there, this is the number one concern that they have. You'll recall that there was a petition that was brought to the council. You'll recall that they've met with Public Works Engineering. You'll recall that they tried to come up with something that was reasonable to address the the pinch point or the area where most of the concern is. There are probably some things that can be done rather than, the most expensive thing. But I think that we have an obligation to take a look. And we set a precedent in the past to do that. At Providence Point, when those residents came to us, we invested money in a design and promised that we would look at grant opportunities to fund that. Well, I'm not an experienced grant writer, and I do know a little bit about the criteria, but in terms of a safety issue, I have a feeling that if we can come up with something that's reasonable, it will compete favorably. And if it doesn't the first year, maybe it will the second year. So I've had personal interaction with a lot of the folks there, and I'm going to support this. I understand that if it doesn't, you've provided some good rationale for why we should not do that. But we have a responsibility to take all of the information that we've got, and you can talk about process, you can talk about tip, you can talk about all of these things, but I believe that representative government, and and I know you've listened to citizens and you've done some soul searching, but I think that it's not a waste of money, and it is a concern that should be addressed sooner rather than later. Other comments? Tola.
So this is, as several people alluded to, a tough one because I understand how the folks on the west end of town feel about this issue. I think that the more established communities in town often have a number of common concerns, and I think the folks at the west end of town and the folks on Squawk have a lot of the same issues. Mm-hmm. We don't have as many parks as some of the other areas. We have our own pinch points on Squawk Mountain, right? If you come down Mount Olympus and you want to walk down to the nearest parks that you can get to, there are places where there are no sidewalks, mm-hmm. and they're busy streets. So I'm not trying to minimize at all the concern that we've heard here tonight. But I think what really resonates for me is this issue of that we do have a process. We have, 19 things on the list, and some of them are every bit as much of safety improvement mm-hmm. type issues. And so I am going to vote to remove this item, but I encourage folks from the west end of town to continue this process as we go into next year, as we go into prioritizing the next round of improvements that we do to continue to make it clear to us how important this is to them.
Other comments? Stacy?
Well, I agree with Paul and Josh and Tola, and it is very difficult because I would say the easier thing for me to do would be to say yes, and the harder thing for me to do is to stick with the process. And so I'm going to vote to stick with the process, but I do hope that you all stay very involved and see it through.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a question. If this were added to next year's TIP, it becomes part of the potential funding for projects, because when you have something on the TIP, you can get outside funding for them. Is this something that the administration believes could compete for funding to allow us, by having it as a TIP project, not have to be fully city funded to do this study? Are there potential grant opportunities that could be used for this work?
It can always compete. I guess the question is, would it compete well? And I think it would be a challenge to get it funded through grants. But the good thing is the council's still looking at mitigation and that whole process for concurrency. Mm-hmm. So if you got it on the TIP, there would be an opportunity for funding, through the concurrency program if whatever that program, those fees end up being.
Thanks.
Other questions or comments? So, this is a potential add, so, up is add, down is not to add.
Understood.
So, 1, 2, 3. 4 to 2, to not add it. Reverse 911, not currently funded, so this would be an add, which fund? This would be
I think it's the equipment replacement fund.
equipment replacement?
Right? Okay.
I didn't hear that, Diane.
There is the equipment rental fund, and what early indication is there is some funding set aside, but I suspect by 2015, we would be in a better position to fully fund this.
Okay. So what page would we be looking at, Beth Ann?
That's all of where we have our replacement for police vehicles and shop vehicles and generators.
No,
and-
I know that. What
Yeah.
page?
That is 9-8, 9-9,
Okay.
and 9-10.
9-8.
I think it's more 9-10 is the list. of items.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, questions or comments on this one? Paul?
The ending fund balance would be almost $6 million. So I'm missing something.
This fund is set up for replacement of reserves, so if you take this money and fund this project, then you're defunding something that we've already acquired as an asset, and we're in the process of
Okay.
setting money aside for its eventual replacement.
Okay.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. So this is really our only option for a funding source?
Well, it's general fund or capital, the CI, you have other sources.
Okay. And so I think what I heard then, when you vetted the capital facilities plan and considered it not to include this in the budget, that was your analysis?
Part of it was that there were other higher priorities included in the capital improvement fund and the general fund, and sort of, when we came down to the end of the day, it was sort of like, we're out of money.
Okay.
Well, that doesn't sound good.
And it was a disciplined process they were following. Josh, you asked that this be added because it was on the facilities plan, but not in the budget.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find where it was prioritized in the CFP, and I have that up, but there's a lot of parts. You know, we didn't have a chance this year in the infrastructure committee to really go through these particular types of projects. So I don't know if it was just a carryover, the way it was listed in the CFP, but it was definitely listed as a 2014 item. Now, I'm comfortable moving it to 2015 if, you know, the administration's confident it can get funded at that time. Because I think, as Fred mentioned, it has been a goal, it has been a priority. I think there's a very important safety component to having a reverse 911 system. This is not a lot of money. But, you know, it just seems to me that if we prioritized it at a particular point in time and it made it into the CFP for 2014, then there should have been a way to find the funding for it because it was based on the council's directive as a priority. So I'm not sure how it ended up dropping off, and I'm trying to figure out, and I might need 2 minutes to do that, but, you know, where did the line get drawn? Did it just miss the cut? Or was it, you know, number 1 or 2 on that list?
It was further down the list.
Was it?
Yes.
Well, I'm trying to figure out.
I think given the fact that there was a sense that it was a redundancy, since we do have some of that service opportunity through King County, it's just not as robust, that it just didn't make the prioritization list.
So there is a degree of this service already provided to our citizens by King County.
Yep.
But you say it's not as, this item would be, you said more robust, I think.
So it sounds like what I kind of heard earlier, which may be a worthwhile discussion, is to have the services committee look at it. Maybe you build it in the next year, and you have an opportunity to do a mid-year budget adjustment if you chose to do that at that time, if you decided to recommend it. But there is some opportunity to provide this service already through that King County system.
It also seems like there's an opportunity. Nowadays, anytime there's an Amber Alert, my phone goes off, right? It seems worth looking into, now that technology is being rolled
New
out.
technology.
Can we piggyback off that as well?
And I found it, and I'm fine with moving it to 2015. It's number 10 on the list. It was the last 2014 item. So I can see this, or rationalize it, if you will, as the line being drawn, just above it as opposed to below it. So it wasn't as if it was, number 1 or 2, which was my concern, that the council gave direction for it to be a high priority. So I would like services to maybe look at it, see if we can fund it next year, but I'd be fine with not funding it in 2014.
Okay. Other questions or comments? So that was an add. So up would be to add, down would be to not add it. 1, 2, 3. Okay, unanimous not to add it. Issaquah Highlands Shop. The design.
Would you like me to start?
I would, Stacy.
So I appreciate Mayor Freisinger's little bit of history here and where the genesis of this site came from, and it was from the Park Point transaction. But over the past couple of years, outside of that process, that transaction, I think it's been mixed reviews, and we have not heard anything from. The only thing I can recall hearing from the public are numerous letters from the Highlands folks saying that they would not like to have that site used for that purpose. It's a high visibility site. It's there by the parks and by all of our parks facilities up there. I'm just not sure that. Well, I can say that I do not believe that that's the highest and best use for that land. But I think more importantly at this point, I think it's probably premature to spend money on designing a facility there when, as Tola mentioned earlier, alluded to, we have the Klahani annexation decision ahead of us. And if that were the case, I think it would really call into question whether that's the best place for that kind of a facility. And then at that point, after we know the result of that vote, if we get to that point, then I think that that's a better time to decide where we would want to locate that, and that would be the time to spend the money. So I would support holding off on spending any more money on that site, investing any more money on that site until sometime later next year.
Josh?
Thanks, Fred. The CFP lists it as the 4th highest priority for city facilities improvements. What was notable to me is that originally that was expected to be only $90,000 in 2014, and that number changed, and it went up to $160,000 from the time this was written. And I'm sure there are good reasons for doing that, but it's not that number that bothers me. It's the one after it that gives me sticker shock. 2015, it's listed at 750,000. And so, if it went from 90 to 160 for whatever reason, I don't know what 750 might turn into. And as Stacy and Tola have pointed out, you know, there are still questions in my mind about where city services should be located with an expansion of our territory, and it just doesn't seem like 2014 is the right time to be making that decision. If it turns out that, in fact, the Highlands and the specific location is the right place, another year I don't think is going to cause a critical delay or a critical problem when it comes to storing things. I don't know where we're storing stuff now for the Highlands, but we seem to be getting along okay without the storage site, so another year doesn't seem like it'll hurt.
Other comments? Ready to vote on this one? This is a reduction, so up is to remove, down is to keep it. 1, 2, 3. That's unanimous to remove.
And I have just one question, if I could. The tourism plan that was up there for this year at $5,000, it got wiped off, and I, excuse me. Has that been funded?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the chambers agreed, to 5,000. The city, that would be a $5,000 add for the city for 2014. So, what's next? Did we have a list of?
You had some miscellaneous.
Of things that we wanted to talk about?
We're having
So,
a sidebar here. So there were some items that you had asked specifically whether or not you wanted to include in the work plan for this upcoming year. Those
I've
would be in the
heard,
the miscellaneous topic items. And then, yes, that was it.
so, under miscellaneous topics, we've had some discussion around the future of the Tibbetts Manor, and so I believe I have heard an interest in looking at that as a work item for 2014. So rather than just lumping everything into the first quarter, when would you like to see the results of that, that analysis or recommendation from the administration? Tola?
I'll suggest Q3, because then we can do updated vision Q1, ongoing financials Q2, and then Tibbetts in Q3. Just it seems like a.
Okay. So,
Okay.
you mentioned a whole bunch of things.
I was just going to say, okay.
You were saying, what?
Sorry, I was suggesting that if you just said one per quarter, you start with the vision, because that's
Oh.
the most important.
Okay.
And then you go to financial, because that's a derivative of vision, or it's a downstream from vision, and then Tibbetts could be in the third quarter.
Okay.
As just a suggestion.
Comments or discussion?
I like that idea, and you know, I hate to start imposing new work plan items that we didn't discuss, you know, in the council goal-setting retreat. But Stacy's, you know, comments about having a vision, so many things flow from that and will inform our policy making that, you know, I don't know actually why it didn't get approved as a goal, you know, back in the spring. In terms of Tibbetts Manor, you know, that was one I was concerned about. I remember we had that discussion in budget meetings several years ago. It's not an urgent issue. I think Q3 is fine, as long as we can address that before the next budget comes around, so that we have a better understanding of where we want to go. I don't think we're going to make any decisions about the future of the manor in 2014. It's more about informing us as to what our options are and what we can do, and, you know, what are we taking in, what are we spending on it, and just having that better understanding. You know, I'm not saying we're going to shutter the doors or sell it off or do anything like that. It's a good city resource, but I want to have a better understanding of what it means to our bottom line. But when it comes to the other items on that list, I think they're very, very important.
What I don't understand, I understand the Tibbetts Manor one. I'm looking at updated vision, and so I don't know what that looks like and what impact that will have on the work for city staff, or what the expectation is. When the city developed their vision back before I even moved to the city, I believe, that was a multi-year process, and so I don't know what that work item looks like.
Am I confusing you? I don't know if you're looking for,
I'm just trying to make sure that we are providing a reason, that
some direction?
some direction. What I'm worried about.
Fred, I think maybe we need to start by going back a little bit to some of the work that the Economic Vitality Commission has done. I mean, they've done a fair amount in regards to taking a look at the community and doing a fair amount of research on that. Because I'm sort of sitting here with you too saying, so what do we actually get when we get a updated vision? And how does, what's the parts and the pieces that help us move forward with other pieces, and what's the return on investment?
So I think one of the things that we're lacking when we talk about an updated vision, and I've looked at it a lot, and particularly a lot since the preparation for goal setting. And I think maybe the best way to start is not a very long, drawn-out discussion tonight, but what we're missing is probably examples and how you use a vision and strategic planning to inform sort of and drive everything that the city does. And it's kind of an abstract concept until you actually see how other organizations, other governments use them. And so I'm not sure it would be a, I mean, we could be here a while and try to explain what that is. And so I have my own idea of how it would go, and I don't envision that it would be a multi-year process, and I don't envision that it would be staff. I mean, my personal vision would be that it would include a consultant to pull everything together that we already know. I mean, I think we know almost everything we need to know about our community to pull together an updated vision and strategic plan. So
I heard the word consultant, and so typically consultants
cost money.
cost money.
So what I was going to suggest is that the administration could put the options together for us, maybe, in the, for that.
So could maybe put something together?
So what we do, how we pull together, how we, what the options are for updating the vision. I mean, I can,
Okay,
Paul's got.
If I make a suggestion, I think, I'm suggesting we actually defer further development of this idea so that, and as Tola suggested, perhaps early part of 2014, that then council leadership take it up with now Mayor-elect Butler and and define that process going forward. I would suggest that then whatever leadership team emerges, develop an outline for that and then take it up with the administration.
That's what I meant to say.
I understand what you just said.
Okay.
So I feel a little bit better about that, because I've learned a long time ago that as you're trying to wrap up the budget, you don't do your finest work and figure it out, and that I just want to make sure that there are reasonable expectations about, and so what I've heard is that council leadership and the mayor will define the process and some options for updating the vision. Did I capture that right? Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, so the ongoing financial blur up there. Can someone, what does that say?
That's the ongoing financial sustainability that's been part
Oh,
of the
okay.
discussion, and we talked about perhaps an ad hoc committee, if there was a desire to look at that for this upcoming year. But that's what it was up there.
Okay.
I just want to say, I think that continues to be very important. I think when we were first talking about it, some people were maybe thinking in the context of closing, of rounding getting closure on the budget. But I think that Councilmember Barber, I think, framed it right, that we really want to look at where we are competitively with other cities and see, as you know, looking long term at, you know, having ongoing revenues matching ongoing expenses, and how our various policies fit into that. How quickly we get the rest of the DSD recovery in. You know, does that happen all in one fell swoop? How does that relate to B&O? And the overall package for making sure that businesses view Issaquah as a great place to do business, but within the context of being fiscally sustainable.
Paul?
I'll add to that too, that back on October 14th, the Director of Economic Development provided us some material that said we need to take a look at other areas. And so way I envision this would be is that a holistic look at the revenue side of what we do here at the city, and which that's overdue. And there may be some affirming of our current approaches, and we may identify opportunities for possible adjustments without, you know, anything. We have some interesting information that suggests some areas need attention, and so that's what I envision this to be, is that this holistic look at revenue sources and which really hasn't happened for a while, and it's time to happen.
So how would you envision that holistic look at revenue sources be accomplished? I don't argue with.
Can I get back to you on that?
Sure, but
I mean,
because
that's a
we-
process step, and I'm not sure we need to define that tonight.
Yep, we probably don't, but how would we define them? How would we go through and figure that out? Are you looking for a recommendation from, well, let's see, that one that's second quarter? As was your proposal, as I recall, was second quarter. Okay, so you'd be looking for some ideas and thoughts in the second quarter to figure out how to go forward with that?
And it's critical too that it needs to inform the 215 budget process.
Mhm.
And there needs to be sufficient information for our consideration when we do our goal setting as well.
Good, okay. And I agree with that.
And Fred, and it's just probably a small part of this, but at one time, Services and Safety always had an update monthly in regards to the revenue, where it's at. We had the opportunity to ask the questions, and that piece, I feel, has been missed and would be a nice practice to go back to, and that's probably a small part of where you're trying to get to, Paul. So just thoughts,
Okay,
no action.
okay.
So I guess to further drill down a little bit in Paul's comment, the looking at, so I would view the sort of the ad hoc committee or the ongoing financial sustainability question to be a little higher level look at sustainability and the long overdue review of some potential or revenue sources that we may change. I view that as being more of our normal process. So I would prefer to see, for example, we've talked about B&O taxes and whether or not we should be changing those. I would think that that would be something that we would want to bring forward as an agenda bill sooner, much sooner rather than later. I don't know why that needs to be part of a sustainability question before a committee, and then potentially have an answer in time to help us with the 2015 budget planning, and there may be other opportunities with other revenue sources that I'm not sure, I don't think are appropriate to go through that sustainability committee. I think that just adds another layer.
Okay.
You know, I'm fine with having services continue to get the updates or restart getting the updates for a while. I don't think that forming an ad hoc committee in Q1 is really feasible at the moment because we're going to have a lot of council reshuffling of responsibilities, and we're going to be playing one down for a little while. And when you play one down, the thing to do is get the puck out of your zone, not to try to make something happen. So, you know, we've got to take a little time to gather ourselves and reorganize as a council over the next few months. But, you know, in the meantime, if services got updates and had some discussions and began some preliminary groundwork, then we could get towards potentially having an ad hoc committee and or using work sessions in 2014 as a tool for the full council exploring these issues that have been discussed, or pieces of these issues that have been discussed. You know, maybe not try to swallow the whole elephant all at once. So there are a number of tools we can use, but I think Q2 is probably a more realistic timeframe, understanding that with the goal-setting retreat, we want to have information available to us to inform the goal-setting process, as Paul pointed out.
So I think what I'm hearing is use the existing council committee organization and the work sessions, those processes to continue the discussion
For now.
on this for now.
So Stacy said something that reminded me of an idea earlier, and I know that as council president, you will be drafting a letter transmitting these, formally transmitting these adjustments to the proposed budget. And I think we hold in our hand something that's really compelling that actually justifies specific action that we, at a very high level, that we could commit to right now. We all know that the process is that generally if we're going to change something, we do an agenda bill and then we refer to some committee, and it goes through our very public process before the council makes any decision. And I think this report from Economic Development that highlights where we, our current structure of how we do business and occupation tax, just, I mean, my suggestion would be that in our transmittal letter that there'd be a recommendation to actually the formation of an agenda bill to get this process started. I think this is one that we can already call out as to perhaps come forward with an agenda bill in Q1, and that we, with some intention of attempt to resolve that question before the end of Q2. And I think we have the information right now provided by the administration that particular item doesn't need to anything special formed. It can be initiated, and my suggestion would be to include that in our transmittal letter.
Okay. So I'm looking, there's a suggestion, so I'm looking for a nodding of the heads that to be specific, looking at the handout that the Economic Development Department briefed us on early in our process, and where they looked at revenues and questions around revenues and current taxes, and suggesting that maybe we take a look at those, and that an agenda bill come forward for referral to Services and Safety in the first quarter of 2014. Tola?
So my only question actually has to do with you as our mayor-elect, and this suggestion does sort of put you in a little bit of an odd position, right? Because you are our council president at the moment,
Yeah.
and before too long you will be our mayor. And I think this process really will require both the mayor's office and the council, you know, to really work strongly to be united as we move forward on this effort, because I think there will be a lot of concerns and questions and fear, uncertainty, and doubt as we take a look at this. So I just want to make sure, if you're comfortable with it, I'm comfortable with it. I do think this is a somewhat compelling document, but because it puts you in a little bit of a weird position right at the moment, I want to make sure that.
Well, it doesn't really, because right now I'm speaking as a member of the council and the president of the council, and I have not really shifted, you know, as the incoming mayor after the first of the year. So I've continued to exercise my responsibilities, you know, as a council member, and I'm speaking, you know, from that perspective right now.
Okay, it's in a sense committing you in the early phases of your new administration towards a certain thing with the council.
What did you say?
Well, no, it's asking you now as council president to sort of dictate a little bit some of the agenda that you're going to have on your desk.
okay.
It doesn't commit you to do anything.
Okay.
Perhaps I misspoke. It drives the agenda that you will see on day one in the mayor's office.
Well, when I ran for mayor, financial sustainability was an important part of my platform.
And we collectively on this council are making that recommendation.
Yeah.
It's not Fred alone.
Yeah. Okay, so, is there anything else up on the board? Are there any other topics related to the 2014 budget that you would like to discuss?
I'd just like to take a minute, and I have no idea if anybody else feels the way I do about it, but you know, I think there were a lot of questions about putting this process on camera. This is certainly probably the most challenging budget that I've seen in the 5 budgets that I've been associated with. But and again, I'm not speaking for anyone else, but I think at the end of this process, I'm really proud of what we have done we came forward, various people had various concerns, the administration came back with thoughtful responses, we came back with, you know, thoughtful examination of those thoughtful responses, and I hope that folks watching, whether they agreed with the decision that we made or they didn't agree with the decision, I really hope they come away understanding how seriously we take this process. It's the most important thing we do. And, you know, I hope we decide to do it going forward. I don't know if we will, but I think for this process this year, it was really good that it was on camera and that people saw how we did this. Thank you.
And thank you for those comments. Other comments? Let me just say that this has been a challenge. I want to thank the administration and the mayor. It was a tough year to put together a budget, and it was a difficult time. I'd like to thank our city administrator, our finance director, and all of the department heads who were involved in this. It's not just the folks at the table, it's the folks, you know, in the audience right now, and there's a lot of work that goes into it, and it starts, you know, in the spring, and this is the culmination, and it looks like we've wrapped up our work on the budget. Is there anything else that you need from us in order to finalize the budget?
Nope.
Well, we've already had audience comments. We did that at the beginning, so if there's no further business, we are adjourned.
They're coming back, there's like 5 minutes